pretty exciting time right now. So should be able to see my slides okay. Let me just pull my participant list up here. Bear with me 1 second, just so I make sure I can see everybody who's on. I see some names that I recognize, which is always exciting. So that is very, very cool. All right, so welcome, welcome. So future project management, we're going to talk through some of the updates that have come out from PMI. Also, I'm going to speak to some things that are happening within the industry and how they are impacting the Project Management Institute and what is going on with them. And what do these changes, like I say, mean to you? If you are certified or if you're planning on getting certified on any of the PMI credentials, this is definitely going to have an impact. So let's start off. First of all, I want to introduce myself. Like I said, my name is Belinda Goodrich. I am the president of PM Learning Solutions. We are a Project Management Institute registered education provider in REP. We have been for quite a number of years. We've been in business for over 13 years now. And we have a very simple mission, simple vision, which is just to provide the best training and exam preparation services that we can to project managers out there. And we absolutely love what we do. We love serving the project management community and giving back to that community. And that is one of the things that you're seeing here today is free webinars like this. So I have been in project management myself for over 30 years now. I do hold 6 of the PMI credentials. So I have my PMP. I also have my program management professional, risk management professional, scheduling management professional, Agile certified practitioner, and my certified associate in project management, as well as my PMP, as I mentioned. So, you know, I've been around PMI for a number of years, and obviously I see value in the credentials, not only because I hold them, but obviously because we provide the training on them. And it's been very interesting to watch what's gone on in the, what I'll call the field of the profession of project management over these last 3 decades. And we're seeing some really interesting and turbulent changes, some disruption certainly happening. Before I retired and started this company of PM Learning Solutions, I was able to be in project management across a number of industries. So finance, healthcare, IT, engineering. I do a lot of work with Department of Defense now. I still consult on projects, so not only do I run the training company, but I also consult as well. I work with organizations, helping them with their project management approach and with their outcomes, setting up their project management offices, etc. And so the nice thing about that is, you know, I'm not just sitting here teaching classes on how to pass your PMP. I'm actually out there with all of you guys doing the work and seeing what's happening, what those impacts are across different industries. And that's such a cool aspect to have. So that's about me. Again, PM Learning Solutions is the training company. My website is belindagoodrich.com. PM Learning Solutions is pmlearningsolutions.com. So if you want to learn anything more about either myself personally or my organization, feel free to go out to those websites. You are enjoying a free 1 PDU webinar. Like I say, this is our way of giving back to the project management community. We love to be able to offer insight into what we see, hear, know is happening. And so we plan to do these about once a month. So stay tuned. Like I say, stay connected with us as far as our website. Join our newsletter, follow me on LinkedIn. You can also follow our YouTube channel as well. All right, so let's get to this. So PMI made a number of announcements earlier this year, and some of them actually caught us a little bit by surprise. So like I said, our company is a registered education provider, an REP, which means that we go through an evaluation process with PMI to validate that our materials and our programs are in alignment with the PMI approach. And even as an REP, we were a little surprised by a couple of the changes. So the first one that happened was that they transitioned from using Prometric as their exam provider, as their exam proxy, over to Pearson VUE. So for years and years, it's been that you take your credentialing exams at a Prometric location. And as of July 2019, they switched over to Pearson VUE. Now, my understanding, one of the explanations that they gave as far as, the why behind this change was access to many more test centers. So it really opened up the flexibility, that there were more test centers available, more availability, more frequent availability. Now, if you're joining this webinar from the US, we're a little spoiled here. We've got, unless you live pretty remote, we've got a fair number of sites even before they switched to Pearson VUE. But overseas, especially for my students that were in Europe and stuff, it was a little bit more challenging to get a seat. So Pearson VUE is hopefully going to be opening that up more, providing more access. What we did find out after our first students took their exam at Pearson VUE is that the test experience actually did change. In some ways, somewhat significantly. So a couple of things that we saw on the PMP exam and the CAPM, so the Project Management Professional and the Certified Associate in Project Management. Number one is your score report looked different. Okay, the score report looked different coming out. It's still looking at where you are from a target perspective. Are you above target, below target? Needs improvement? That still looked somewhat the same, so slight change there. For the PMP aspirants, big change was that you no longer got the packet of paper. You got a little laminated sheet, like a little whiteboard to do your dump sheet, any calculations that you had to do. But interestingly enough, the CAPM students, the Certified Associate in Project Management, they were actually now given the packet of paper. So it almost like did a little bit of a switch there. So that was one of the changes. The other thing was that Prometric, candidates had the opportunity or the potential to highlight information within the question and then also to strike through answers that they felt they could eliminate. And neither one of those options are available at Pearson VUE. So again, minor types of updates, but they still can impact the test experience. So if you've already taken your credentialing exam, obviously doesn't matter too much to you, but if you know of folks who are going to be going in and testing, it definitely would have a different impact. If you are hoping to pursue your credential, and I would encourage you to do so, then keep in mind, like I say, you're going to have a little bit of a different experience than we've seen before. Now, you still do get your results immediately after, so that's fantastic because there is nothing worse than waiting for test results. I am not a patient person. I don't know about you. All right. The second change that they announced was changes to the CAPM. That is our Certified Associate in Project Management exam. Okay, and that CAPM exam, this is for individuals who don't meet the qualifications to sit for their project management professional. So it's intended to be what we call a 5-year certification. I mean, you don't renew it. The thought is at the end of the 5 years, you've had enough project management experience that you're able to sit for your PMP. So some of the changes that we see coming out with CAPM, number one is that you are able to take the test online. It's proctored online now, or you can go to a Pearson VUE. That's effective immediately. That's actually been in place for a little while. They also updated the Agile Certified Practitioner, the PMI ACP exam, that you can now take that proctored online at home as well or in your office. So that's kind of cool. The application is changing as of August 28th. So in 2 weeks, the application is changing in that they are eliminating the experience requirement. So prior to August 28th, you would need to show that you have 1,500 hours of project experience being on a project team. You don't have to be leading and directing, but just participating on a project. And now they are completely eliminating that and just saying, okay, as long as you have taken some type of a class and you've got your education hours, that's all you need. So that was a pretty big change to eliminate that. The second aspect of that application is, let's say you have your CAPM and now you want to go pursue your PMP. They are allowing that transition to occur to PMP without you getting your education hours for PMP. So what if you've been able to sit for your CAPM, they're calling that good. So that's kind of another interesting thing. Now, I will put my training provider hat on and just say to you, if you have your CAPM and you're going to pursue your PMP, sometimes that extra training is actually worth it because it is pretty challenging, right? That difference in how the questions are. Yeah, so the comment we have coming in on our chat, thank you, Emmanuel. You are absolutely right. Right now it's the 1,500 hours or the 23 hours of education. That 1,500 hours is now gone. So it's just the education. Yep, it's just the education piece. Exactly right. And then the other question, or the other change that they're making in this one, I don't know if everybody is real thrilled about this, but it is around the question types. This is fascinating. And you know that when you go in to take any of the PMI credential exams, they're multiple choice, A, B, C, or D, with one correct answer. As of September, now, unfortunately, Project Management Institute has not given us a day in September, so we're going to assume as of September 1st, if you're taking the CAPM exam, you're going to have those multiple choice questions, but they're also going to be adding in multiple answer questions, meaning they'll say, you know, which two of the following are blah, 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 right? And you have to pick like A and C or B and D or whatever. Ooh, those types of questions are painful and challenging, but on the bright side, PMI is going to tell you, you know, which two or pick three or whatever. So they'll make it clear how many answers you're needing. They're also doing matching questions. So this is really intriguing, and we're fascinated to see what this ends up looking like in practice. But, you know, they're going to have like matching things, you know, maybe it's knowledge area, process groups, processes, and you have to match them to that. So it's kind of interesting on those questions. So again, that will come into play in September. Correct, Emmanuel. Yep, you got it. Excellent. All right. So, and I just want to answer the questions. I'll try to answer the questions as we go. I might delay on some until I get to a good spot, but can you have a copy of the presentation? Yes, Jessica, this webinar is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, PM Learning Solutions YouTube channel. So we'll make sure that you guys are able to go back in and see that. All right, PMP exam changes. Whoa, boy, these are some interesting ones. So this is going to be as of the 16th of December. Now, one thing to help people understand is that periodically, there's two types of changes that happen to the PMP exam, and they're staggered, they alternate. The first one is the one most people are familiar with. That's when the PMBOK guide, right, a guide to the project management body of knowledge, gets updated. So we're currently on the 6th edition, and anytime they do a new edition, which is every, 3 to 4 or 5 years, whatever, again, a little bit of a difference there depending, again, between editions, then the exam will obviously change. In between PMBOK guide changes, they also do a change which is associated with what we call a role delineation study, an RDS, a role delineation study. And that RDS, what that does is it says, okay, based on practice, based on what project managers are doing out there in the community, how well does our exam align? And do we need to make any changes based on that? All right. So like I said, we've been in business now for 13 years. So we've gone through a number of PMBOK guide changes. So we started on PMBOK guide, actually 3rd going up to 4th edition. And obviously a number of role delineation study changes, right? The interim changes as well. So we're pretty practiced in this at this point. This is probably the most substantial from a surface level, but not as scary as some people think it is. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a few minutes. All right, so currently, if you go in up until December 15th and take your PMP exam, here's how your questions are split out, okay? The domains that they're gonna be looking at: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closing, right? Those are our process groups, right? Those are our domains. And you can see the percentages there of questions. So you get 13% of your questions from initiating, which we have 2 processes there within that initiating process group. 24% of your questions from planning, 31% from executing, 25% from monitor control, and 7% from your one closing process, which is close, project, or phase. And so not only is that how your questions are split out, but that's also how you see your results, right? So you go in and you'll get a target, right? They'll say you're either at target, below target, above target in each of these different domains. All right. And so that's how it's been mapped. It's been mapped to the process groups for years. So this is a big change. So instead of mapping the domains being to the process groups, the new domains are people, process, and business environment. So really fascinating here. This is like I say, a pretty stunning change. Now, underlying this, some things are new, some things aren't, okay? So, you got to kind of visualize this, that it's not like we're doing entirely new sets of questions. For example, there are questions across all 5 of these current domains that could fall under people. There are questions across all 5 that fall under process, that fall under business environment. So they're just being mapped differently. And that's where some people got really freaked out about, oh my goodness, this is an entirely new test. Well, not quite. It's just mapping differently. Okay, it's just going to be mapping it different. Christy, that's a great question. I'm going to talk about that one in just a second. All right. Great question there that she asked, which is around passability rates. Are we going to improve passability rates? So I'm going to come back to that one in a second. So people, 42%, process, 50%, and business environment, 8%. Now, on top of that, here's the other big shift is a good portion of the questions, and PMI does not release a percentage-wise, but on the current exam, a lot of the questions are more in your predictive waterfall type approaches, with some iterative incremental, some adaptive thrown in there. On the new exam, as of December 16th, it's going to be a good old 50-50, they're saying. 50% would be set up in like a predictive environment, 50% being adaptive, your agile approaches. So a lot heavier on agile on the new exam, right? So again, slicing and dicing these questions a couple of different ways. One is looking at how do we map to these domains, these new 3 domains, but then also recognizing that we're going to have about a 50-50 split of predictive versus adaptive. So pretty significant when you look at that change from a superficial perspective, because again, keep in mind that underneath here, we can map a lot of the existing questions that were, let's say, to planning can now go over to people or to process. All right. So I want to walk through some of these key changes and some of the new things that we're going to see when we look at the mapping with the exam, what we call the exam content outline. And these changes very specifically link to what's going on in the environment for project management. So this is our eye to the future right here, guys. Number one is servant leadership. So there's going to be more questions around servant leadership. Now, if you have worked on Agile projects in the past, if you're familiar with Agile, Scrum, specifically, we talk a lot in Agile about servant leadership, right? As an Agile project manager or a Scrum master, you want to create an environment where your team can work as healthy, as efficiently, with as much productivity as possible. So instead of being a task manager in Agile, you are truly there to make sure your team is doing well, is healthy, that they're getting their impediments removed, their blockages removed, and you're there to keep them going and increase their velocity, right? And so that idea of servant leadership is putting those people first. And the idea is if we can put our team first and we understand what they need, they are going to in turn be more productive and create better results on our project. So that's servant leadership. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a kind of a days of old, right? So I'm actually sitting here across from me is my bookcase, and I actually have all of the PMBOK guides from when they first started. So it's like a little tiny white book. And I was actually involved before there was even a PMBOK guide. And we didn't really talk that much about soft skills And now we're realizing, wow, this is such a huge part of project management. It's not about, wow, I can calculate a critical path or I can run earn value. It's how do we motivate our folks? How do we get a healthy team? That's how we maximize our productivity and increase our results. So servant leadership. Being able to measure training outcomes. So if we are training our team on different aspects of our project work, how do we measure that? How do we know if we actually got the results that we needed and that we anticipated? A big one, and this really came to light already with PMBOK Guide 6th edition, but we're seeing even more focus on that moving into this new update in December, which is maintaining your team and your knowledge transfer. And what we mean by that is we are not in the same environment we were in years ago, where you'd join a company and you'd retire from that company. And if you were a project manager, it was because you were a subject matter expert. Now, right, people move. There's so much fluidity within our work environments, from company to company or even within roles. And so what do we do with all that knowledge? And like I say, PMI did a really good job, I believe, with PMBOK Guide 6th edition, talking about knowledge management, because we don't want that knowledge walking out the door. And we talk about explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge, and that tacit knowledge, that's the stuff, that's what you and I know, our experiences, our perspectives, and things like that. So how do we capture that and use that to improve our results? I have to say I'm a big fan of this one. I always have been, which is promoting your team performance by applying emotional intelligence, and that includes the emotional needs of the stakeholders. For those of you who know anything about me, and I recognize a few of the names on this webinar, kind of a funny story that some people know is I actually had an emotional intelligence intervention placed on my butt years ago now. It's over 20 years ago now. I was a senior project manager and I was not emotionally intelligent. And thankfully, my company saw value in me and invested in me and sent me to emotional intelligence training. And it literally changed my life. That sounds incredibly dramatic, but it's very true. And so it was exciting to me when PMI really said, wow, project managers, they have done the research, higher your emotional intelligence, the higher the likelihood is for positive project outcomes. Think about it, guys. We deal with change. People hate change. We are intrinsically wired to not like change because it represents a threat. And as project managers, we're the ones responsible for making change. It makes sense. We really have to understand the emotions involved, including our team, including our stakeholders. So I love that they're emphasizing that. Assessing opportunities to deliver value incrementally. So here's how I like to describe this one. Let's think about Excel. All right, you guys are all project managers or involved in the project management field in some way, shape, or form. You probably use Excel. All right, from pretty much on a daily basis to, oh boy, yeah, I'm a heavy duty user. The average user, think about the average user of Excel and within a business environment. Studies show on average, people use probably about 15 to 20% max of the capabilities of Excel. So here let's use the number 20%. That means there is 80% functionality that most users don't use, that we have to maintain, we have to manage, we have to refactor, we have to deal with anytime I'm making new changes. And so I always like to use that as the example. When we think about delivering value incrementally, we want to focus on, okay, what is that highest value? What is the highest value features, functions? Prioritize those first, and then be able to do consistent evaluations to say, okay, do we even move forward with any more work, or have we reached the point where we're good? Right around Y2K, I was involved in implementing a lot of large project and portfolio management suites. And what we would find out is we'd implement these very robust tools, and then they basically would use them like a glorified spreadsheet. Well, you might as well use a spreadsheet. So it's kind of that same idea is what's that value incrementally? And that goes with this last point of finding the minimum viable product. What is the least amount I can give you that's going to meet your needs and you're going to be satisfied, right? And so it's kind of looking at it in a different way. Additional focus on coordinating with other projects and other operations. So how do our projects function within the broader context of our organizations? All right, so not only just having that very myopic view of this is my project, this is it, this is all I care about, but really expecting project managers to be able to take that step back and look more globally and say, okay, how does it impact not only operations when I transfer my product over to operations, but how is it impacting other projects? You know, we have what I call technical spider webs now, right? Every project we do, which is implementing any type of change, we have to think about all of those pieces, parts, functionalities that it's touching, all right, that it's touching out there. And what are the implications to that? So it's not like we can just make a change to our widget and it's not going to impact anything else. That's not the way our infrastructure is anymore. So having that heads up look. Being able to recommend the most appropriate methodology and approach. So as of December 16th, PMP credential applicants, they're going to have questions around this, like how do we decide what the best approach is? What's the best methodology? Do we do a predictive? Do we do an adaptive approach? And being able to confidently and with knowledge make that recommendation. And this is really speaking to, Pulse of the Profession in 2018, where we're seeing more and more organizations are using hybrid approaches. We talked a little bit about that knowledge. So what is the approach for knowledge transfer? You know, are we doing training? Are we doing lessons learned? Are we doing postmortems? Are we doing retrospectives? How do we ensure we get that transfer of knowledge? As I mentioned at the start of the changes to the PMP exam, being able to apply iterative and incremental practices throughout your life cycle. And again, we're not seeing just this, here's a one size fits all, here's our methodology, here's the way that we do all of our projects, and we do the same exact, 200 steps every time. We're seeing this fluidity, flexibility to say, okay, where can we apply more incremental practices? Where does it make sense? I mean, and that can even be things, like I say, I'm a big fan of doing retrospectives. I hate getting to, at the end of the project and then they're going to go, oh, okay, let's now capture our lessons learned. Because guess what? At the end of your project, no one cares anymore what your lessons learned were, right? You should be capturing all the way throughout. And the retrospectives allow us to really fine-tune what it is that we're doing, how we're working together. Huge aspect of this change, this is a whole entire section that has not been addressed previously, is around compliance. Compliance. I was going to put it in all caps, but then it looks like you're yelling, right? But how are we supporting compliance? What type of compliance categories? Do we have any threats to that? How are we going to measure our project's compliance? And this is, again, speaking to not only our technical complexity, but also just an environment of increased monitoring, increased legislation, depending on your industry, right? Are you in the financial field? Like I say, Department of Defense. Are you in healthcare? All of these things have compliance aspects to them. We also look at just from an HR perspective. We look at it from a procurement perspective. And so a really big focus on compliance. And again, that was not in there previously. Nope, that's okay, Jessica. They haven't announced it yet. So Jessica's question is, when is the PMBOK guide being updated? They haven't released it. I would assume it's going to be in about 2 years, roughly. They're relatively predictable on it. I have not seen them put out like a call for contributors yet. That's usually our first inkling that they've got something going. So I'd imagine, if I had to guess, I would say probably 2021 would be my guess based on past. Yeah. Go back. There we go. And last one here is supporting organizational change. In really, again, understanding the perspective, and a lot of that is that psychological, the emotional intelligence around, okay, how is the organization going to deal with the change that we're making? And what does that look like? How do we go from the as is to the to be, right? And supporting that. So now I want to back up because I love that Christy asked this question. And this is great, guys. I love that you guys are using this chat window because this is how we share knowledge, which is a lot of what we're talking about today, right? Christy's question was, is the intent of the change to improve the passability rates? I will answer that from Belinda's perspective only. So this is just Belinda's view of the world. This is not something from PMI, but I will tell you that, no, thank you, Emmanuel. There you go. They have a call for team members. There you go. All right. I somehow miss that. Usually I see those. So thank you, Emmanuel. Is the intent of the change to improve the passability rates? I would say no. So here's the thing with any credential. And again, this is simply my perspective. So please note that this is just me giving you my opinion. This is not me speaking on behalf of PMI, okay? For a credential to be valuable, people have to fail, okay? Meaning that if everybody could pass, then it doesn't hold the same, weight. It doesn't hold the same value. Okay, it has to be something that has some type of barrier to achievement. So I do not believe the intent is to improve passability rates because I believe that they need to, certain people, they have to have some failures. That sounds absolutely horrible. And I don't mean that PMI is like the big boogeyman and they're a monster and they're awful, but you know, I don't think that that's the intent. I think the intent is to align the exam, though, with practice, with real project management work in the real world, which in turn could have the effect of improving the passability, right? Because the challenge right now is people will go into studying and preparing for the PMP and they try to memorize all these inputs and tools, techniques, and outputs, and they're learning nothing about real life project management. They're not proving a lot about real life project management. They're just able to say, yep, boy, I memorized a bunch of stuff. They made some changes with the 6th edition where they started to bucket more of the tools and techniques to try to get people away from memorizing. And I am very, I'm a big, loud advocate of you don't memorize for the exam, you learn and you understand. And you learn and understand from a practical perspective, and then the exam is easier. So I think that's where they're moving, Christy. If I had to answer it, like I say, just from my opinion, I don't think that the idea is, oh, more people will be able to pass, but I think more people will come out and go, okay, that does reflect more of real world project management. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. All right, so where are we going? Where is project management going? I think it's an exciting time to be in project management. I am passionate about project management. I have been since I was 14. I know it's very weird, but I love it because we're making change. And so there's such cool, exciting things with it. And I always think, oh, this is a really cool time to be in project management. Oh no, this is a really cool time to be in project management. Well, it just gets better and better the way I look at it, because look at how complex our environments are now, right? It gets more and more challenging. We also have to consider that, you know, as the baby boomers are leaving the job market, we have a huge need for skilled project managers. There has never been a better time in my personal opinion to be a project manager, to be a skilled project manager, to be a certified project manager. There's so much need out there. I don't know if you guys read this, but I love reading the Pulse of the Profession. PMI puts it out every year, and I love it. It's not super in depth, but it gives you those highlights of, okay, what's going on out there? And I find it just absolutely fascinating. And so Pulse of the Profession for 2019, organizations wasted almost 12% of their investment in project spend last year due to poor performance. And what follows that statement is that's been holding steady for about the past 5 years. So it's kind of crazy. It's like, okay, how do we move the needle? Right? How do we move the needle? And so what's going on here that we can start to, and when you think of the billions of dollars that are spent, right? The billions of dollars that are spent on project management, you can see, well, that's 12%, that's significant. All right. So a couple of things that came out of Pulse of the Profession for 2019 that I'm going to cite. First one, and this was actually PwC's 2019 CEO survey. They said 85% of respondents say AI being artificial intelligence, will significantly change the way they do business in the next 5 years. close to 2/3 of global CEOs see it as a bigger disruptor than the internet. Now think about that, right? Think about, I mean, we joke all the time about the Google, right? What did we do before the Google, you know? And so if you're putting that in perspective and you're seeing that 2/3 of CEOs are saying, yeah, AI is actually going to mess with us even more, positively and or negatively. Wow, that's staggering, right? They came up in the Pulse of the Profession, they came up with the PMTQ. Okay, and what the heck does that stand for? Well, it's the Project Management Technology Quotient. And they define it as the ability to adapt, manage, and integrate technology based on the needs of the organization or the project at hand. And so when we look at this is not, hey, let's just throw more technology at things, but this is really, how do we assess what the needs are, both of our project and the organization, and then decide, okay, now what technology makes the most sense? All right. And again, I come out of the Y2K era where, you know, it was, you know, bigger, better, stronger, more robust, tons of documentation, rigid methodologies, dot the I's, cross the T's, double check it 16 times, right? And now they're saying, really, let's look and be flexible and adaptable and agile enough to say, okay, what's really going to be needed here? And so it's kind of a fascinating when we think about PMTQ. And so these are the characteristics they give. And I want to give a couple of examples here. So the first one, if you have high PMTQ, if your organization has high PMTQ, the first characteristic would be what they call always on curiosity. So you're looking for what's next, trying out new project delivery approaches, new ideas, new perspectives, new technologies, keeping an open mind along with a healthy dose of skepticism. So you can look at those emerging delivery practices without chasing every new digital trend. Okay, now think about your environments that you work in right now. Would you consider your organization to have an always on curiosity? It's interesting because I'm vice president of the National Speakers Association Arizona chapter. And so I work with a board of speakers who tend to be more creatives. And I'm coming at it from a more analytical project management perspective. And it's really funny because, you know, I'll suggest some new things and they'll go, oh, we've done that before. Well, we tried that before, it didn't work. And so they've got themselves kind of in this rut. And so, you know, think about your organizations. Are they very much in the rut? This is the way we've always done things. Are they chasing everything that's happening, or are they able to get that curiosity in the right space, right? So again, as project manager, you have your finger on the pulse of that, right? Kind of what are they doing? All-inclusive leadership. So it means that you're getting the best out of your team, no matter their age, their level on the org chart, their digital knowledge, their skill set, their location. So you're not just managing people, but also managing tech, and managing people who know how to manage tech. It's kind of interesting. There was an example in the Pulse of the Profession, and it was talking about NASA because they have these robots that they've brought on now. So sometimes your team may not just be humans. Your team may actually be made up of what we consider like digital ambassadors. You might actually have robots on your team now. And so what they did at NASA, they were trying to figure out like access levels, user levels, and they literally created agency user IDs, government email accounts for each of those robots. So they would get their credentials, their system access, just like any other user. And it's like kind of cool when you think about that, right? How did they have to adapt to that? And then a future-proof talent pool. So again, kind of putting this in the perspective of your organization, recruiting and retaining project professionals with the skills that are needed for the digital era. So the will, the disposition, ability to keep up with trends and adapt. And I always say, I will hire anyone with the will over the skill any day of the week. Right? If you come to me and you've got a great attitude and you want to learn, those are the people I want on my team. Right? Even if you haven't had access to something before or experience with it, if you are open to learning, those are the people we need, right? And so really looking at that, and again, having people be open to exploring those new ideas. AT&T, they had a lot of its workforce was being left behind, showed only half of AT&T's 250,000 employees had the science, tech, engineering, and math skills that the company's projects required. More than 100,000 workers were in hardware-related jobs that wouldn't exist. So instead of hiring a bunch of new people, what they did is they invested $1 billion in a global program that is going to arm those 100,000 employees with technology and skills required to move forward. So again, think about that. And I know that was a big thing as we were moving mainframe to client server, and then we're looking at cloud. You know, what are the skill sets of the people around and the jobs that they're invested in or that they're working in? So I thought those were really fascinating key points. And so let's look at some more research associated with this. And again, as we go through there, I want you to be thinking about your organizations and think about you as a project manager. And they have classified these, and this is from the Pulse of the Profession this year, to innovators and laggards. You know, so who's charging ahead, who's lagging behind, right? And so this is really fascinating. The green bar being the innovators, the gray being the laggards. And you can see such a staggering difference here. Prioritizing developing those technical skills for project managers, ongoing project manager training, project management business skills, which we're going to talk about in a minute, formal recognition processes, formal process to develop that PM competency. There's that knowledge transfer, formal knowledge transfer. You're going to hear more and more about that. Formal process to mature existing project management practices. Again, are we in the mode of we're just supporting and maintaining, or are we truly growing and maturing our practices? Having a defined career path for project managers, I mean, absolutely staggering, and developing skills for our executive sponsors as well. So like I say, this is why I love the Pulse of the Profession, because it really, they do enough surveys of enough companies that you get this flavor of, okay, what's making the difference out there? Same type of thing. So innovators versus laggards, right? We look at the green versus the gray here. Again, change management, hybrid practices. So again, is your organization kind of stuck in, oh, this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it? Design thinking, agile, DevOps. So again, really fascinating to see the pretty shocking differences there. And then the last one, return on investment. When we talk about that PMTQ, right? So what do we get for that? What does that mean? Okay, well, we know we save money, improve stakeholder satisfaction rates, but that percentage of investment wasted is less than the laggards. That's what I opened this section with, right? I said 12%, right? Well, actually, if you have a higher PMTQ, if your organization does, you're actually reducing that 12% number, right? So met original goals and business intent, a little bit of a margin there. Completed within budget, pretty significant. Completed on time. Failed projects, budgets lost, so a lot less there. Scope creep, that's kind of fascinating. And then those that were deemed failures, and again, 12% versus 18%. So kind of cool stuff. So again, depending on what your role is within your organization, or as if maybe you're an educator, or maybe you run a PMO, or maybe you're a project manager, or maybe you're just learning about project management, maybe you're a CIO, these are stats to pay attention to. Okay, these are the things where we can really add value. If you are interested in pursuing your credentials, some people will ask me, hey, you know, how do I give the business value of me wanting to go get a PMP? A lot of it is really becoming an expert in project management and being able to say, okay, I'm going to bring this knowledge to my organization. And at the end of the day, it's going to allow us to do better, be more productive, save money, achieve our goals. All right, so a couple of things here as we'll go through, and then I'll answer any questions. So if you have questions that you want to tee up, certainly please feel free to do so. Hybrid approaches. So I talked about this already, but it's the idea of being flexible and saying, okay, you know, there are aspects of agile, there are aspects of predictive, and again, it really depends on your environment, right? And it depends on the complexity, it depends on your team. I pretty much now am pretty much all hybrid. I started off more predictive, and then started to bring agile in. And that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, okay, I'm going to do Scrum and just Scrum and do pure Scrum. Maybe you say, well, you know, we can do actually predictive projects because we have pretty stable scope. We know what we're doing, but I am going to do the daily stand-up meeting and I am going to do a retrospective every other week with my team. So there are ways that you can bring in aspects or attributes without fully being in an agile environment. And that's what we see with these hybrid approaches. And again, PMI is encouraging organizations to really evaluate and say, okay, what makes sense for the particular project, not just for the organization. So that's a big thing to look at. And again, bringing in that hybrid. Now in the 2018 Pulse of the Profession, they talked a lot more about that. And we saw that rise in the 2018 Pulse of the Profession of more and more organizations doing more of a hybrid approach. It was interesting when, you know, kind of again, looking at the evolution, you know, there was a time period where some practitioners of project management, some what I would call old school without meaning it to be insulting, but old school practitioners of project management thought Agile was a fad. They thought it was a way to not plan. It was a way to shortcut things. It was not looked upon kindly. And obviously it was very focused on software development. And now we're seeing it bleed outside of software development into a lot of different types of environments. So very fascinating. So if you haven't had the opportunity to learn about Agile, definitely do so. And we're going to talk a little bit about Disciplined Agile in a second. This one was fascinating. This is also came out of the 2018 Pulse of the Profession. And it's been something I've been working with. I have a mastermind group of CIOs that I work with. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, but I was excited to see that PMI also brought it up in the Pulse of the Profession in 2018, which is that when we talk about a project being successful, you know, if I asked you, you know, how do you define success for your project, right? The old way we would define success would be, oh, we delivered on time, on budget, with the scope that was requested. We met the quality requirements, right? We want to look at that a little differently. Yeah, those things are important, so it's not that they're not, but ultimately at the end of the day, did we deliver value? Okay, did the outcome actually provide value to either our organization or to our clients, right, our customers? I could deliver a project on time, on budget, that met all the requirements, but then when it gets released or launched, the value is not there. Okay, we're not receiving. Let's say we're creating a product for external customers. Well, are they buying it? Okay, that's success. Yeah. I would say, so Nevin, that's a great question. His question is, with the new PMP exams going, is the new PMP exam pushing project managers more toward the Agile methodology? I wouldn't say pushing. I would say being aware. I would more position it as it's broadening your toolkit versus, oh, you've got to do Agile or you've got to do waterfall, you've got to do this or you've got to do that. It's just opening up the toolkit and giving you more things you can pick and choose from. So, and PMI will be the first to say Agile is not appropriate for all environments, just like predictive is not okay for all environments. So I don't think it's we want to make every project manager an Agile project manager, but I do believe the reality of our environment today is, as a project manager, it benefits you to understand both, to understand multiple approaches. And again, it may not be that you fully do Agile, but maybe there are some things from Agile that make sense. And a lot of this is based on how complex and rapidly changing our environment is. Yeah. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. I'm going to get there, Emmanuel. Yeah, I was talking about the Disciplined Agile. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Yep. So great question then, Evan. Another thing that we're going to see is PM owning more of the benefits. And again, there was a little bit of a shift on this, a pendulum shift on this, where earlier versions of the PMP exam that would come up quite a bit about, net present value, internal rate of return, doing that business case. But I see that the project manager is going to be more and more accountable for that and owning the benefits and understanding, again, what is the value we need to deliver here. I am a big supporter, big fan, big advocate for putting in phase gates, checkpoints, whatever you want to call them. They may not be direct phase gates. It may not be between phases, but some type of set checkpoint where you're evaluating, okay, what is the value we're going to get from this project compared to how much are we spending to do it? Resource hours, resource costs, dollars. Does it continue to make sense? What I find happens in a lot of organizations is that they will continue to throw money at a failing project because they feel like, well, we've already invested so much, we can't quit now because then we'd waste that money. Hey, and there has to be these checkpoints where we can go, no, you know what? Realistically, we're not going to get the value we anticipated. Better to pull the plug now than continue to invest in something that's not going to deliver the value we need. And so I see that project manager is going to step into more and more of a role of really owning the benefits from the perspective of responsible for checking periodically, making recommendations, knowing what went into getting the project authorized, knowing what the business case is, and truly knowing those numbers. And so we may see that start to impact the exam more and more too. And again, looking at things like net present value, et cetera. It was interesting. I worked for an organization, I won't mention the name of it, but it was a global financial company. And we would spend an unbelievable amount of time prior to authorizing projects doing all of these valuations, right? Doing net present value, internal rate of return, return on investment, BCAs on these projects, right? All this time upfront, all this analysis. We would never check throughout the project or even at the end of the project if those numbers were correct. Well, okay, so if we're not double checking, what was the point of us going through all of that work, right? And so I see us closing the loop on that. I've talked about this quite a bit as we've gone through this webinar, but emphasis on knowledge retention and transfer, that cannot be underscored. As adults, we learn best through what we call tribal knowledge or osmotic communication, meaning those around us, hearing things, seeing things. And so as we've become more and more virtual, we're losing a lot of what we call that tacit knowledge. And so, okay, how do we get that knowledge? How are we able to retain it? How are we able to transfer it and put it into something meaningful that we can use? All right, so this is Emmanuel. So on August 9th, so last week, PMI did announce that they acquired what's called Disciplined Agile. Okay, DA, it's a toolkit. Actually comes out from Scott Ambler. So some of you may be familiar with Scott Ambler as far as Ambisoft, and he's obviously done extensive work in Agile for years, along with Mark Lines. And it's interesting. So when we talk about DA, it helps teams, individuals make informed choices, improve the way they're working, help organizations streamline Agile, lean strategies to make better decisions. And so they have certified partners and coaches. And the key with Disciplined Agile, it almost is it's kind of an oxymoron, right? Disciplined Agile sounds very strict, like it's disciplined, right? Well, actually the whole benefit of Disciplined Agile is you customize, right? It helps customize the experience, optimize IT solution delivery to make the business more agile. So it's kind of interesting in that there's 12,000 practitioners, 30 countries that have been trained in it. There's over 50,000 Disciplined Agile books that have been sold. And so it recognizes that every organization is different. And then within each organization, there are different ways of working. So it meets you where you are, allows you to tailor your solution. So what they've said is, and this I'm reading off of their press release, integration of the acquisition is beginning immediately. PMI will provide additional details to members and other stakeholders in due course. So it's kind of fascinating to see. Ideally, what the intention here is that applying the toolkit will allow you to customize any method or framework. So if you're using traditional project management, you're using Scrum, you're using SAFe, whatever you're using, you can leverage that. So again, just looking at a range of Agile and Lean options. So they consider it an Agile body of knowledge. They say it's the only true body of knowledge out there for Agile. And so, yeah. So what do I think of that? My thoughts are fascinating. It's very interesting. I think it's very progressive of PMI to do this, and I think part of this reflects on the new presidency that we have. I think with Sunil coming in, I think the new president CEO, we're seeing quite a few things getting shooken up here, and this is one of them. So more to come, definitely. Like I say, they say they're gonna let us know more as you know, in the future. So so yeah, more to come on that, definitely. No, so Jim should ask if, you know, if you're taking, I'm assuming you're talking about when you're taking the test, did they tell you which questions you got wrong, what the correct answers are? Oh gosh, no. PMI protects their question bank like it is like the nuclear codes, man. You don't get to know which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong. You just get a target score, unfortunately. Yeah, it's always a little challenging. And it's going to be even more challenging after, you know, at least now we can break it out by process group. You can kind of see if for some reason you didn't pass the first time. Future, you're only going to be grouped into those three domains. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Yeah. So, okay, we've got a couple minutes here. So if you have any other questions, certainly be teeing those up for me. I don't see any open questions there. A couple of things just to wrap up. Again, PM Learning Solutions, that is our training company. If you ever were interested in taking a class with us, we always offer our webinar participants a $200 discount. Use value 200. As the code. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I will be putting this webinar on YouTube, so please feel free to share that out. This is, again, we do this as a way to give back to the project management community. We're very passionate about helping grow project managers and project management. If you are a PMP, PGMP, RMP, SB, ACP, I think you can claim too, your PDU claim code. So in the credential reporting system on PMI.org, this is the code you would put in, 2973, X as in X-ray, V as in Victor, E as in Echo, 7, U as umbrella, and D as in dog. And that will get you your 1 PDU. All right, God, we got a couple of extra questions here. I love questions. Should we expect the practice exam structure to change as well? Depending on what practice exams you're using, they need to change, most definitely. You want to make sure if you are currently studying for your exam, again, just determine what your target date is. If you're planning on taking your PMP exam before the 16th of December, obviously that would be what our current structure looks like. After that, make sure that it's been updated to the current exam content outlet. And I mean, all the exam questions randomly, they are random, completely random. And there are hundreds of questions in that question bank. So we could all go in and take the test on the same day, same time, and come out with something completely different. So kind of fascinating there. Yeah, lots of questions in there. We are always here to help and support. If you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like I say, we'll be doing these approximately one a month, and we have some guest speakers lined up as well. It's a great way to get PDUs, but it's also a great way to stay current on project management trends and what's going on. Again, some of these are going to be more focused on certain areas of subject matter expertise. Some are going to be more general, but definitely follow us on our social media channels and make sure that you sign up. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well, and I always post it on there. Yep, certainly. You can always reach out to me. I will tell you I am on the road most of the time, so just be a little patient if I don't get back to you immediately. But certainly feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help and provide resources as much as possible. All right. I think that's it. We are at our time, so I am going to end our session now. Thank you all so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. I'm really happy that you are all on here and look forward to seeing you again on a future one. Y'all have a wonderful day or evening, and we'll talk to you soon.